Wonderful. Here we are. Good morning, listeners and viewers. Apologies for that slight delay in us connecting and coming live. It's because it is a live show. There's always the potential for stuff to happen and not happen. But here we are, and I'm delighted to have the amazing, the awesome, the something else starting with an A. Mr. Alan Curry. Good morning, Mr. Curry.
I wasn't sure who you were describing there, but that's very nice of you. I'll tell you what, here's another one. In the world in which we live in, how many times do we talk about stuff as a word for loads of different explanations? There's a good word to discuss, isn't it? Stuff.
Stuff.
Yeah?
What about stuff?
Well, no, I wasn't going to be to that perspective. It's just we've got to get stuff done. We need that stuff. Where do we get that stuff from? What a word!
It is a word. Sorry, I'm getting distracted, as you can tell.
Obviously,
I can't multitask. It's funny.
Man.
Stuff that you talk about, Alan, and wiring generally. I find it amazing that my wife is able to do like loads of stuff. And I go, right, I'm doing this, and then I'm doing that, and I'm doing, it's just a different type of consideration is what it is. Where does and how does everyone realize what stuff means?
Yeah, well, here's a good one there. Right, and let's just move it on, because obviously it's business. And the world's been in a funny place in the last couple of weeks, sorry. How does Donald Trump get stuff done? And in our country, and bearing in your background in business, that's Winston in the background, I apologise for that. In our country, appears not to be able to get stuff done relevant to business.
Well, maybe you need to do business to be able to understand business. And maybe you need some business background to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a great point, isn't it? Because, okay, part of this, what we talk about is a little bit political and just on viewpoints without being apolitical. But in the context, I don't run a business. You're sitting with a sign behind you with the SME badge and the work you do and the expertise you've had over the years. So in the context of the show, where do you think we are with business at the moment?
Where do I think we are with business?
Yes, over to you.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, that's a very loose question.
Well, no, because I'm sure a lot of people who listen to you on a basis, and every now and then I guest with you, and it depends where we go, because you quite rightly said before, we're live, there's no script, we don't have a discussion. So I follow politics.
There's always a script. Sorry, there's always a script, because Jamie creates one and sends that over. It may not get followed, is probably what the likelihood is. But let me just, for the purposes of completeness, because you were asking about business. Ooh, look at this. I just need to do some wizardry type of stuff. So smile quickly.
Right. So when I say there's no script, when I join you, I don't have a script. So it depends where we go with these bits and pieces. So you started with that word stuff, and I've just moved it on to business, because that's part of the show, hence the name Show Business. And with your expertise and background, Maybe that people are interested on your views of where we are now in relation to business. And I don't know a lot about this. I've paid national insurance as an employee, but never as an employer. Some of the things I keep reading that's going on in this minute in the world, and just maybe a context from yourself.
Yeah, no, so it's a good question. So, where and what is going on in the world and business is very interesting, and it feels as if there's a real hokey pokey element to business policy life. There's so much contradiction. It goes from we're refining the growth of we're refining the growth outlook. So Bank of England last week says we're dropping our growth projections from 1.5 to 0.75, and in this quarter, 0.25. And then a week later, just yesterday, there's an announcement that the economy grew by 0.1% or whatever it was. So it's like there's all of this. For me, there's a question around statistics and data, just broadly, right? Can you place your phone somewhere? I'm getting a bit like twitchy watching your phone move around.
Sorry, I've got to. Don't forget, I've got to manage Winston when I'm talking to you.
All right, okay, fair enough. It's but don't forget that other people are actually watching.
Yes, sorry. Apologies to the viewers, listeners. Winston's my four-legged cavapoo who's in the room at the same time. So I'm sure any dog lover, pet lover understands sometimes they can wander.
They can, and it is, and it was. So business, it's hard and it's getting harder. I don't see that changing. People are a lot more cautious. There's a lot more businesses going to the wall. Having said all of that, Alan, I'm incredibly enthusiastic and optimistic today, given the fact that we have officially occupied the 10,000 square foot International Trade Centre at Newcastle Airport, which I'd built several years, commissioned, had built, and I take the keys and I've just paid for it today. So I'll continue paying for it for the rest of my life. But anyway,
and it looks good. Other than you've put new traffic lights up there that pause me when I'm on my way to me cup of coffee at Dobby's.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I'll use the other way. Don't come down that road. So that's really exciting. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So if businesses are worried about, and I need to share this with you because it's, can you see that now? Woo-hoo, it's Valentine's Day. So here's the script. And I've even put a picture of you in there rather than Jeff. So it's Happy Valentine's Day, Alan. I'm delighted to be spending it with you. It's my good wife's birthday today, so something I'll never forget.
I didn't know it was Louise's birthday on that day. That's ironic, isn't it?
I don't know who that is. I don't talk about any names or people.
Yeah, no, right. But, I was thinking of my girlfriend.
Yeah, I know that. And you've got loads of them. So hopefully
allegedly.
The wife... allegedly, yeah, sorry, there's always an alleged list. And here's some updates. Here's the Northeast tech sector ambition to close the digital divide. That's happening. The Northeast at the forefront of AI economic prospects. But Northeast firms face tough decisions over future as overdue invoices rocket to 2-year high. And I suppose this is one of the concerns. And it goes back to, what do I think about business right now, Alan? So we've got less people paying us on time. And sadly, some of these or public sector organisations, Alan.
Mm. Actually, I don't get involved with this background you have, but I also have a part to play in a local community club, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a business in its own way because it turns over, and again, I'll not mention names, but it turns over just under £1 million. But we've always adhered to paying our bills when we get them in.
Really?
And as a consequence, when I started asking these questions, there appears to be a culture in business that you don't have to pay anything for 30 or 60 days. And what you're explaining is people are even trying to push that further.
It's hard, and one of the things that we've always done is paid people. Uh, in fact, always paid people even if we were struggling. So it wasn't something that we'd discussed last week, but or maybe we did, but just brushed over it. But it was Barclays had a serious, and it was interesting because it didn't go anywhere, but Barclays had a serious issue with their systems on the 29th or the 31st, even the 31st of January. So this was the first payroll of the month. So lots of people getting paid after Christmas where they hadn't been paid for 5, 6, 7 weeks, potentially. All of the self-assessments and financial year ends were due, and Barclays systems crashed. And I remember sitting there so worried because all of it we use, it's one of the banks that we use, and there's many other banks out there, and some are better than others and whatever else. Anyway, it just reinforced the reliance on digital and reminded me of the times when I'd get a brown paper envelope.
That's probably not a good description of brown paper envelope, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, it was actually a brown, not the type of brown paper envelope, but it was a brown paper. It was brown. It was a paper envelope. It had a little window on the front, and
yes,
they'd write out what you got paid, and they'd put it in, and you'd put your cash in, and I'd take it and take it in its whole entirety to mum and give it to mum, and mum would open it up and have a look inside and take a fiver out and give it to me, and I'd go, bloody hell, talk about like slave labour. Right? Not only was I getting paid like £1 an hour at that time by the employer, it then sort of turned into 5 pence an hour. Or by the time I actually got what out of my share of it. But anyway, I don't complain. I've never complained, and I'm so glad I was able to support Mum.
Look, slightly off topic here, but obviously I'm a little more older than yourself. But the first time I got a 10 shilling note was like such a monumental piece of sort of finance in my life, a 10 shilling note. Now, I'm sure a number of listeners or viewers won't even know what a 10 shilling note is, right? It's the equivalent of 50 pence now. But in my day, 10 shilling was incredible. And what you're saying exactly the same relative to our ages. You get a £5 note. So your £5 note was my 10 shilling note.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, it was interesting though. And then this drive to make societies, communities cashless, it's painful, isn't it?
Well, pre-pandemic, as much as my background, I never quite liked using the card, on the codes and all the rest of it. And I always had money in my pocket. Now, I'm getting so used to it being quite cashless. They're shutting banks down. We're going, and one of the things you've mentioned before there, what I meant to come back on, was in the early 90s. So again, to show my age, somebody talked to me about emails, and I said, "Oh yeah, that's fine." I hadn't got a clue what an email was. Now you're talking about brown paper envelopes, and who sends a letter now? Who knows how to write a letter other than an email? And the next point of that statement is, I actually think, and I hope I'm proven wrong, but somewhere there's an internet and everything's on it. And if it ever collapses, is there the potential for us as a, I don't want to be too dramatic here, but for us to understand how to live?
I mean, it's even things like plugs, right? I was looking at, so here's a complex thing, and my son, who has no name, um, well, he
Yeah.
has a name,
But he's a
very
canny
precious,
footballer.
very precious to me. Anyway, so his room, and this is all business related, obviously. So when we moved in, we bought. He wanted a cabin type bed, and I built a cabin bed myself, and it was really technical. But I put a a socket, an extension, a multi extension round the back of it and plugged it into a socket because he couldn't then get access once it was built, right? So I've done that. And the last couple of weeks he says, Dad. I'm going, yeah. He's like, oh, my Xbox is making crackly noises. I'm going, what? And he's like, oh, it's not working. I'll unplug it. And I must have been busy with whatever it was. And then last week he goes, oh, Dad, I don't think it's the Xbox. It's the socket. And I turn it on, like the extension box thing where it plugs in loads of devices. And it was making crackling noises. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a surge of the electricity that's causing an issue. Anyway, the point of this story was and is that I was looking at, I can't get physically a plug around the back of the drawers and the bed to unplug the current one, the faulty one, and plug in the new one. And then I was thinking, I might just cut the end of the lead and rewire the plug. And then I was thinking,
How do I do it?
No, I mean, I remember vividly, in
Yeah.
with
Brown,
some.
red, and neutral.
Well, it was just like grey, sort of yellow and green, brown, and then the blue is what it was. So you'd always have, sort of brown on the right, blue on the left, and green and yellow at the top. So the neutral, and some of them even just had only two, because historically it wasn't 3-pin, it was, two, and not all of them were grounded. And I equally remember a couple of times getting a little bit of a shock. And I don't know if you've ever had not a real full
Yeah, no, but I
on
have.
electric
Yes, I
shock,
have.
but if you'd wired it wrong and you touched it or whatever, it would give you a shock and you'd get like a brown burn on your finger. And I was just reminiscing about learning, because with that shock, you never got those wires wrong again, right? Is what you didn't do. But the fact that everything's sealed, you can't get under or into anything. And going back onto your email point, so in the mid 90s, 93, 94, I was involved in sort of technology, and I learned everything about computers, how you built them, how to build them, what was involved in them, how to set them up, and then done the same with servers and everything else, and how to fix them and how to understand them. In fact, I can still remember the sort of the semicolon and command lines and things
Yeah,
like that, everything else, and all of them. And then I think, well, young people aren't getting the chance to explore properly and are just purely relying on, well, what's in your phone.
no,
You know,
it's a great move on from a point. Sadly, yesterday I attended yet another funeral, but
oh, I'm sorry to hear.
Some of the relatives who obviously were born and bred here now live in America, right? So one of the ladies who came across has 5 children, from 13 down over, 4 boys, 1 child. But it was fascinating talking to a young lad from America who had no concept of what we have here, but he was absolutely, he was really switched on, a Republican. And what I was suggested, because they're only here for a few days because of the funeral, to go to Beamish, right?
Right.
To learn about our past. And I obviously know a couple of people at Beamish, and I've told them, I said, I'm a little bit disappointed with the latest edition. And of course, I said it with a straight face, and they said, "Oh, why is that on?" I said, "Well, because I was okay looking at what my granddad and my dad learned, but I'm not very happy now that you've got showpieces that I lived." And that's basically what we're saying, isn't it? We lived a certain generation where we lived, we changed plugs. I need a 3 amp fuse, right? And I found an old plug that I'd cut off, as you do. My dad taught me never to throw things away. I now have to send away for a 3 amp fuse to change one of the things that has gone wrong in the kitchen. And possibly some people wouldn't even know how to do that.
It's crazy. So coming back to that point, which you've made reference to, I'm really comfortable with, and you probably shouldn't, and unless you're a qualified electrician, you have all your certification, you should not meddle with electricity or do anything associated with
Yeah.
electricity
Health and
or
safety.
anything that you're unsure of. Curiously, I did as part of my building development, I actually did get a certificate in electrical basics, like probably black and white days, but as in as when we were doing all of the developments and the property developments and everything else, I'd gone out and followed the trades as we were developing a few hundred properties. So I followed them. I was almost an apprentice because I wanted to learn, and then decided that I was going to do the introduction to and whatever else. So anyway, coming back to the plug scenario, I'm probably going to get an electrician in and get him to come and do it. But is the thing. But I'm not uncomfortable with doing it.
No, but probably in bringing it back to business, because we're creating a new generation of people business, the technology and absolutely need to rely upon. But sometimes we're losing some of the softer skills. I do not have any background whatsoever in building an industry, but my dad was a joiner by trade. So I watched him, and he always taught me, whilst he was a joiner, he learned other parts of the trades, how to do electrics, how to do a little bit bricklaying, sort of things like that. And I just wonder whether, because we talk back to business, we talk at the moment, as it Keir Starmer's going to build kind of 12 new towns, and then some of even his own MPs are saying, well, we don't actually have the people who can do it.
It's crazy. It's really crazy, is what it is.
Crazy.
And
I bet you can't remember who sang that. Okay, one for the viewers, one for yourself. When you Google it, back to technology, Patsy Cline. Crazy.
Did she?
Yeah, she sang Crazy.
Yeah, fair enough. So anyway, coming back to business.
Yeah, we were still on the same link. You just give me another word and I took it to another stage.
You did, yes. And whose line is it anyway? One of my favorite things is
Perfect.
I like that. I like that. As in, it's a wonderful show, and I regularly listen to really interesting. Radio 4 is arguably, obviously after Spice FM, because that's where we are. And one of the things we didn't get the chance to do, Alan, was formally introduce you. Because Jaff's not here. I did spend a little bit of time creating a bit of a presentation, is what I did. But the introduction part of you, Alan. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
Well, who am I? What do I do? Another one of my dad's phrases was self-praise is no recommendation, right? So you take everything I'm now about to say with a pinch of salt. So obviously I'm a retired police officer. I retired at the rank of chief superintendent. You and I have been friends for too many years to think about. Now and then, over the years, we've done bits and pieces together through Spice, SME, the work we've done. And basically, I just quite enjoy life. I've got a four-legged dog who's a little bit restless here because he needs to go out as a cavapoo. And every now and then, you and I discuss things live on the radio.
Yes, we do. And it's a wonderful thing. And I'm ever so grateful for your continued support, guidance, and counsel. And we have been friends for a very long time, and I'm ever so grateful for that. And a true demonstration of a friend is when, someone bails out, I go, Mr. Curry, please come along and join us. Because I actually really enjoy the conversations and the ability to have alternative views. And I know Jaff and I certainly don't share views, but we have differing opinions is exactly what we have. So coming back to the world as you know it, Mr. Curry, what is going on, what coming, and whilst we have to remain apolitical on this show, there is a lot going on over in the States, which seems to be taking center stage in their ability to just get stuff done. And everybody else is now sort of not.
Well, it was fascinating yesterday because I've already referred to the individuals who came back from America. And the oldest son was 13, right? And at 13 years of age, absolutely smart, articulate, respectable, lovely kid. But his mum said, and obviously his grandma who's there, how he loves politics. Now that's 13 years of age, and this young person. So I hesitate to use the word kids, right? Because you know how it goes, right? Yeah. But to me, he is a kid. But never mind, say kid, young person, whichever one you're comfortable with. And so we got on about, and we had loads of different things. He plays all sorts of football, American football. We had that conversation. And then somehow somebody said to me, he loves politics. So I said, well, which side are you on? So he's Republican, right? So as a consequence, I said, well, what do you think of Mr. Trump? And his face lit up, honestly. And I said, well, tell me the best quality you have, you consider of your president. And this is a 13-year-old, don't forget. He said, I think he's very smart. That's an interesting conversation from somebody who lives in America and is only 13 years of age.
Yes. That is a very interesting and mature observation, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. Because it's interesting, right? It's the getting stuff done type of approach, which isn't a traditional approach for governments, is it?
And you use the word stuff, don't forget. See how it fits into every conversation.
Well, it absolutely does, as do things. Yeah. How are things? Or
if we talk getting stuff done, right, and then we move across to our country, and I spent 35 years being apolitical, so I don't have a view either way on what I'm going to say. Well, I may have a view, but I'm not going to consider it. What about our current Chancellor, who appears to just go from one rick to another about our CV, our lifestyle, our expenses, all the rest of it? When did you... there was a question on a radio show I was listening to saying, when have you ever lied on a CV and either got the job or got sacked because you lied?
Yeah. And what was the response?
Most people said they might have elaborated a little bit, but not lied.
Yeah, I don't think there's a big difference.
Absolutely.
Because I personally always dampen down the impact that I've had, how great I am, amazing, and all of that.
Amazing. That's a new word. I'll write that one down.
Yeah, but so I've actually got a domain called Amazing, is what it
Right.
is. And and so I've always been hesitant around claiming anything. But yeah, have I ever lied? I don't think I've ever lied. Um, I think because the problem with lying is you get caught up, right? As in,
Absolutely.
it doesn't take much to say, have you worked here for 10 years or have you worked here for 5.5? I think that's it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Well, okay, we're talking about this particular individual. I'm an
Oh,
economist,
really?
right?
What?
I manage my house as best I can financially, like everybody else in the world, but I'm not an economist.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, anyway, well, I don't know if we were talking about anything. I was just giving you an example of
Yeah, no, that's fine.
allegedly,
Yeah, yeah.
allegedly.
Well,
Um,
we're being apolitical, so that's fine.
yeah, and here's the challenge, right? Talking about politics. Here is the biggest challenge facing us in this country. And the biggest challenge in regards to politics is it has become so divisive that we are going to move to among everything, right? You're going to get reform, people now going, and you're going to see this in local authorities. So the local authority elections, you're either going to get a lot more independence or these challenger type of reform organizations, groups, and your traditional leading, whether it's Republican or Democrat or Conservative or Labour or whatever that is, um, there's not going to be a single leading party or authority.
Interesting point, because there may be. Is it because the public have absolutely become totally disillusioned with politicians?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. I don't, necessarily share that view, but obviously that's apolitical and for alleged reasons. But yeah, I could, and I've spoken to several. I can see so many people saying, "I'm either not voting anymore because it's pointless, and the people that I vote for actually say one thing and then come in and do another." Or, you know what, I am going to vote, but it's like none of the above. One of my favorite films is Brewster's Millions,
Right.
right?
You're going back a
And
bit now.
and Richard Pryor, what an actor! What an actor! Absolutely brilliant. Politically incorrect, but all of him and was it Gene? Was it who was his? Who was in? Who did he pair up with?
Oh,
The Richard
I
Pryor.
can see him
Yeah. It
with a
wasn't Gene.
ginger hair, with a big hair. Buff,
Yeah, yeah,
buff
but it
on.
was really funny, and he was in like See No Evil, Hear No Evil. They made a number of comedy movies together, which in this day and age you wouldn't be allowed to make, but they were really, really, really
Well,
funny.
you would be able to watch it, but you'd have a trigger warning beforehand.
All right, okay, well, fair enough. Anyway, Brewster's Million, fantastic movie, and he needs to spend 30 million in 30 days to
Yeah.
then be able to unlock 300 million. And in them days, if you were talking about millions the same way that we now talk about billions, right? In them days. And one of the things that he decided to do was do a campaign to run for mayor, and he ran for mayor, but he didn't want to get voted in. He ran for it under the headline "None of the above." So the campaign was just to spend lots of money because in those days you could and whatever else. But I think that's got quite something to it, right? There's
Yeah.
almost like none of the above because it's like it's either divisive. I mean, everyone says so much and doesn't do what they say.
Yeah. Interesting enough on that note, right? I mean, again, no locations or whatever where I live in aspects. So every now and then I get a little thing through the post from the Liberals in particular, telling us what they've done the last 3 months. I very rarely get I get nothing from the Conservatives. I get very rare anything from the Labour until it's the election time. And the other day I got an envelope to the resident on House of Commons envelope, inside 2 pages on House of Commons notepaper from my local MP asking me, what's the issues that concern me? Contact me here. This is how I can get contacted, do whatever. And my first thought was, not because I got it, it was because I think you're frightened.
Interesting point.
Right? And exactly where you say, who know what, none of the above, etc., etc. If you're an MP, you've got a canny life in certain aspects. And I think the other thing is, and I haven't got a clue on this, but at the last election, particularly, I suspect, from the Conservative point of view, I wonder how many of those people who had good salaries, okay, they get a pension, have got a new job. Anyway, they might be in business. Take it back to business. Do you think?
Let's get back to business.
Yeah, do you think we're back to business? There you go. But do you think actually they had a business acumen that people would want to employ them because of where they'd been? Now, some have obviously had a higher profile than others, and I've got no knowledge of where they are or whatever. But do some of them just actually now think, what do I do with my life? I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. It is very interesting.
Yeah. Look, as a total sideline and off the wall, I was at a meeting yesterday morning with people, would you believe, who travelled all around the country to have this meeting. And they were discussing coming to Newcastle and recognising the city for like an uncharted viewpoint. Now, I obviously, you and I know our view of the Northeast and Newcastle in particular. And one guy said, as I'm driving down the motorway, and one person flew from Southampton, so that's the national link. They saw the Angel of the North and they thought, I'm in Newcastle. So I had to put them right to say, well, actually, there's only one cathedral as you travel through, and that's when you move forward and you see St James's Park. So we've got to be careful about what the icons are in the Northeast. Is it the Angel of the North or is it St James's Park? And you know where my loyalty lies, and Jaff, and yourself, to be fair.
Oh, without a doubt, I'm there.
Yeah,
I am.
And isn't it good, isn't it good
it's talking actually because Jeff's not here. We're not talking. We haven't done the football thing yet.
Yeah.
So, can we look at that and sort of see what is going on?
Right. One of my standard statements is, right, my first football match was 1969, Inter Milan at home, second leg of the Defence of the Fairs Cup. Win Davies scored 2, and we won, obviously, 2-0. And I, as mature as I sometimes don't like to ask, I've never seen my team win anything. And of course, yesterday I had Man United supporters, Liverpool supporters. I'm saying, I'm sick to death of you whinging because you haven't won anything for 5 years. Respectfully, yourself and me, we've never seen our team win any trophy. And they keep saying, oh, well, the League Cup, as we all know, it is nothing. Can you imagine how this city would be if we won the League Cup?
Yeah, imagine if we won 2 cups.
Yeah, and don't forget, they always say, and have done for years, when Newcastle do well, let's turn it back to show business. Businesses
Absolutely.
Do well, people are invigorated, they go to work with a smile, productivity moves up. So, yes, it's the football perspective, but I've done it in the past, and I'm sure people are doing it now. There's a springier step when Newcastle does well. And in fairness, when Sunderland does well as well.
Yeah, I think we should have all the clubs. Yeah, I'd love to see Sunderland back in the Premier League is what I'd like to see. It was like, that camaraderie, that it's like it's
Indie rivalry.
friendly rivalry, absolutely, is what it is.
Yeah. I
Is what
suppose
it is.
my next question's got to be: are you going to Wembley or not?
I'm just. I hope so. I think so. The biggest challenge is um, transport.
Well, not driving, train, flying.
Well, the trains are off from here to York,
Right.
and it's a Sunday, and I wouldn't keep our son off school because I know there's others who are going down, staying over on the Sunday and coming back on the Monday.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and and it's funny. It's not funny at all because I was then thinking, when I drive, I don't particularly want to drive to
No.
London. It's when I was younger, I'd have done it and done it lots and lots of times. But
Yeah.
the way that the roads are, I wouldn't want to drive there 5 hours because that's what it would take on the Saturday to then go to the match and then come back and spend 5 hours on the road on the way back. So I'm just trying to work out whether I drive to York, park at York, get the train from York down to there, get the train back on the Sunday to York, and then drive back from York. Even that's like an hour and a bit, isn't it?
Here's a bit of history, right? Because I went to Wembley in 1973 when Newcastle got beat 3-0 off Liverpool and Keegan scored two. And I left Newcastle at 12 o'clock at night with my black and white top and everything. Then it was a 6-hour journey to London, did the Trafalgar Square bit, went to Wembley, got beat. Uh, when we came out of Wembley, I didn't know London. So we had to go to the underground and it was packed. So I thought, oh, we'll just start walking with my friend. We were only 16, 17 together, right? And I didn't know how far Wembley was from King's Cross. It would no sooner started than a car pulled up, a couple of Liverpool supporters and said, where are you going, lads? Oh, I'm going to King's Cross, drop you off. So anyway, I'm now on the 6 o'clock train home, 6 hours, no money, and I walk back home. And probably one of the worst days in my life. And I vowed I ain't going back to Wembley unless we've got a chance of winning. And I'm still scarred by that.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
So it's Liverpool. So you know that sadly, and I probably don't want this recorded, but it officially
I
does
know,
that
I know.
our younger person is a red.
Ah,
Is what he is.
what a
And
conflict.
well, it's interesting because it's like, well, Dad, where do we sit? And I'm like, there's no way that you could. He's like, oh, well, we're going to wear my red top. I said, no, you're not. Not in the Newcastle end, you're not.
In fairness,
And then,
he does have a Real Madrid top as well, doesn't he?
well, he has lots of Madrid. He has lots of football tops. So
Yeah,
he has
yeah.
Barcelona, Real Madrid, like you name it, and PSG, um, and then I was like, yeah, I wonder, because I wouldn't want to go and sit in the Liverpool side, but I'd probably comfortably sit on my hands. He wouldn't and couldn't, is the thing. So I'm just trying to work out what
I had
to
an
do.
occasion like that a lot of years ago. Uh, one of my friends had some complimentary tickets for Sunderland, and I'm talking years ago because Kieran Dyer was playing for Ipswich at the time. Ipswich were the best team. Sunderland won 2-1, and then we went upstairs for a meal. And at 4 o'clock, the match was Newcastle v Watford. So I'm in the Sunderland hospitality part. I'm watching the Newcastle match, which is on the background, and they scored in the first 5 minutes, and I jumped up and cheered. And it was like, those old vampire movies where nobody
Tumbleweed.
looks at you. And then, of course, my good lady wife, she said, sit down. You just forget where you are, don't you? So even if you had to sit on your hands, I'm not sure you could control yourself.
Funny. Funny, we say. Yeah. So coming back to, are you going? Do you want to go?
No,
Would you
I've
go?
always no, I've turned into an armchair supporter now. But I tell you what, um, the last uh, the FA Cup final was it with Manchester? I had Winston dressed up with a Newcastle United top and a scarf and a hat.
Brilliant.
I'll send you a photograph, and obviously I'm not going to even ask about his intellectual property rights, but you might want to share it just before.
Please do. I want it, and I'll include it, and we'll do whatever we need to do.
Yeah,
So
no, but he looks good in his top and his hat and scarf, etc. So obviously you know Winston. You've known him, as I say, we said earlier on, he's 5 now. But I'm sure it could just be a useful addition to anything you want to circulate.
that would be great. And what are we doing today for Valentine's?
Oh, well, I didn't. Well, again, we're not mentioning names, and I'm sure you've got the same problem. But apparently, wives can never have too many handbags or shoes.
I don't think they can. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, and we learn, don't we? You and I, and anybody who's listening learns. So one of, well, say one. I was going to say one of my wives, my only wife, is now. She's sitting behind me listening.
I know that.
Is now a proud owner of 2 Radley handbags, which I didn't know I needed.
Brilliant. Well done.
I did buy a nice card, but I didn't sign it because obviously on Valentine's Day it's from a mystery lover, isn't it?
I do that all of the time.
Yeah.
I send things and go question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yeah, lots of those.
Even if they're to my wife.
And in fairness to my good lady wife, she didn't forget either. On the basis of 2 Radley handbags, she brought me a bottle of beer.
Fantastic. Lovely.
Yeah. But it's from Harrods in the Metro Centre, so it's in a Harrods bag. I won't
ask. Is there a Harrods in the Metro Centre?
Yeah, there is. Well, I've never been in because I don't go in now, but there is a Harrods aspect. Oh, Pat's saying it's a beauty shop. And there's a cafe in there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a cafe. It's
Can you hear?
Nice.
Can you hear it?
We can, yes, we're live on air. Please don't swear. But
you see, you know her too well. I'm sure there's a song there.
but yeah, it's what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Where am I doing it? Yeah, it is very much it's a great day. Did you know that both my wife and my brother was born on Valentine's Day? Obviously, we're not saying names, and we don't say names.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. All of us, but surely I've told you the story previously. All of us are born on saints' days.
Goes without saying.
So I'm Saint David. My sister's Saint Patrick. My other brother's Saint Valentine's. One of them's Guy Fawkes. The other one's
I know who the one with Guy Fawkes is.
Christmas Eve, yeah, and he's like that as well. And then Christmas Eve, and how curious is this, that our son is born on the same day as my brother, and our daughter is born on the same day as my brother-in-law.
Yeah, no, fascinating.
All of it, right?
It makes you think it was done by design.
It was.
Yeah.
Isn't everything?
It'll come as a surprise that I'm not linked to any saints.
That's shocking. I don't believe it, quite frankly.
My dad always said he would keep me a seat by the fire.
Yeah, good. And interestingly, and just for the last few minutes, talking about learning, because one of the things that I must admit I thoroughly enjoy is doing a little bit of homework, right? And with my son and learning stuff. And it's a couple of weeks back, learned about, or obviously not learned, but relearned or reminded ourselves about William the Conqueror and his era. there was a bit of an essay, 3 big paragraphs that our son had to write, and that was really, really interesting. And then the second part, why did I think about this, was because by the fire comment was this week we wrote about the influence of religion on medieval times.
Yeah.
And how significant heaven, purgatory, and hell was, and even to the extent where religion informed what medical support you gave someone or not, because it was in God's hands, is what it was. So yeah, and this concept of purgatory, where you could actually pay the church, donate money to stop people being held in purgatory and go off to heaven. It's curious, really curious.
Yeah. I mean, my religion is not Catholic, right? But I've been to Rome a couple of times, and one of the finest things I've seen is the Vatican Museum.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those places, if you ever get the chance to go, it's really good. But yeah, the old purgatory, what was I thinking of? William the Conqueror. If you do even go further back, have you, and we've all got streaming services now. I don't know whether you've watched the series Vikings. Right?
Who?
Vikings.
No.
Right? But it starts a little bit historical when they came across here and raped and pillaged. And the first place they got to was, I think it was Holy Island, was it? Yeah.
Right.
And did the old monastery and all of it. So, yes, it's a good show, but it also does do a bit of that type of history, because they believe in when you die, and there's some savage scenes in it, you go to Valhalla.
Yeah.
Then they did. I don't know what the sort of scenario is now. So you've talked about purgatory, hell, and heaven. They had Valhalla. And, one of my finest things, again, I'm sure I've said this, when Dave Allen was about berating bits and pieces, he always said, when he finished, good night, God bless, and may your God go with you. And we don't want to get into religion, but I think that's the greatest thing. Let everybody have their own religion, but not...
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful. Well, I agree. I absolutely agree. And that's what life's all about. You should have a bit of faith. You should have a purpose.
Absolutely.
But it shouldn't be imposed on everyone and everywhere, is the thing. So, we've come up to the end of the show. You're going to do a dance, isn't it? There's a end of the show. Pat's going to do a can, because Pat can.
Look, it's Valentine's Day. Pat's going shopping.
Yes. Yay! Well, lots of love to everyone listening, and Alan and Pat as well. And may you have a blessed day. May you have a blessed Valentine's. I'm off to Kielder Observatory this evening to see the stars.
Excellent.
But I've never been, so I'm excited. Anyway, we'll be back next week.
Spice FM.